Tonight you're about to slip into a forgotten century, where mud, hunger, and the smell of rot cling to every breath. Tonight, you'll live as a medieval peasant in the shadow of the Black Death. No medicine, no mercy, just superstition, sweat, and the will to survive. You'll witness the plague through unwashed eyes, feel history decay beneath your feet, and uncover the secrets of those who ruled from thrones of fear. Then, we'll dig deeper into legends buried in mass graves and rituals lost to time. This isn't just history. It's what your ancestors whispered in the dark. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? And once you've made it through, drop a comment below to let me know how this journey felt to you. You wake to a cold drip of water on your cheek. The straw roof above you sags under last night's rain, letting thin needles of cold slide into your hair. You rub your eyes in the dark, fear blooming as your fingers brush the mud crusted across the wooden planks you call a floor. Somewhere beyond the wall, a villager coughs in ragged bursts. Once, twice, 3 times, then silence. You pray it was only a stray dog. You push yourself to sit up, the motion cracking your joints. Your back aches from the straw mattress that felt inviting only yesterday, before the plague grew close enough to sniff at your door. You swing your legs into muddy leggings, the cloth stiff with dried sweat and something older, fiercer. The room smells of damp wood, rotting straw, and last night's faint whiff of garlic from the bit you tucked under your chin. The wise woman swore its scent would ward off death. You hope she's right. Outside, crows croak in the broken branches of a leafless tree. You crane your neck to see dim dawn light leaking through a slit where the wall's plaster fell away. Weeks ago, you stand on unsteady feet and wrap your threadbare cloak tighter, though it offers little warmth. Your stomach rumbles, not hunger, exactly, but a warning. There is no bread waiting. There hasn't been for days. Navigating by memory, you step over a cracked clay pod in the corner. The air is thick with the promise of sickness, the sticky tension before thunder. Your breath feels like gravel in your throat. You cough once, a dry rasp, and wipe your mouth on the sleeve you washed yesterday in icy well water. The sleeve is still damp. Your nose wrinkles at the chill. You cradle a wooden bowl you borrowed from your neighbor. It's chipped, rim stained black. You'll trade it for water at the well, if the well still flows. If the guard doesn't chase you away. You tighten your grip and step onto the low wooden threshold, feet slipping on slimy planks stained by countless muddied souls. Outside, the village is waking, or what passes for waking. A donkey brays in protest. A dog with mangy fur limps past, nose twitching at something buried in the muck. You slip along a path beaten by countless feet, the mud rising ankle-high. Each step sucks your boot, and more of the sticky earth clings to your leggings. You holler at yourself not to think about it, but your mind latches onto every flinch of discomfort. You reach the common area where the well stands, a stone circle pitted with age. A handful of villagers are already there. A woman in a patched dress, head wrapped in wool. A thin man clutching a leather pouch. A barefoot child whose cough rattles your heart. They keep their distance, eyes sunken with fear, each testing your expression for signs of fever. You lower your bowl and begin to draw water, the wooden bucket's rope fraying. Your knuckles whiten as you pull. The water is cold enough to steal the warmth from your fingers. You cup a handful and bring it to your lips, but you hesitate. Rumors fly that someone spat into the well last night. You swallow anyway. It burns in your throat, but it is water, and it sustains. You glance back at your hut, where the draped cloth over your door flaps in the breeze, a poor shield against gravity and disease. You do not want to return yet. There is safety in speed, but hunger pushes you forward. You scoop more water into your bowl and let yourself breathe, imagining you'll feel the sweetness of wheat and bread soon. You know better. You head toward the communal fire pit, where a knot of villagers stand around embers. No one dares to light flames. Fire draws smoke, and smoke signals sickness. You kneel by a few dying coals, scooping their heat into your palms. For a moment, you close your eyes and pretend you are warm. But ash coats your fingers and stains the hem of your cloak. Beside you, someone coughs again. You look up to see the woman from the well, her eyes red, tears or fever, you cannot tell. She holds a chunk of moldy garlic to her lips like a talisman. You hesitate to speak. fearing that even words can carry plague. Instead, you press the bowl of water to her hands. She narrows her eyes, then cups your gift and drinks without a word. You want to ask if she is all right, but another cough interrupts any question. You move on, guided by memory toward the small patch of weeds you call a garden. A few bedraggled stalks of onions and herbs cling to life in thin rows. You pluck a handful of wilted green, rub the dirt away between your fingers, and chew. It tastes bitter and alive. You swallow, imagining it will keep death at bay. If only for a breath longer, your stomach growls again. You brush trembling fingers over the carved spoon hanging from your belt. You were given it when you were born, an heirloom as useless as a prayer now. You grip it tight, clenching and unclenching. You cannot remember when you last ate bread, but you remember the last taste. Warm, crumbly, like hope. Now hope tastes like cold water and garlic that a sudden gust rattles the rags flapping at your hut's entrance. You jump, heart pounding. Every sound is magnified these days. The creak of wood, the rustle of straw, the faint echo of dying. You imagine plague rats gnawing at bones in the walls, imagining worse things crouching unseen. Your breath hitches. You swallow and steady yourself. The morning sun warms your face for a moment, as if offering mercy. You tilt your chin upward, letting its weak rays touch your skin. You hold this moment, this fragile breath between past and coming agony. You can almost believe you will survive, but you know better. You live in a world where the dead outnumber the living, and filth is a constant companion. You tighten your cloak, load your bowl onto your spoils, and steel yourself for the next step, gathering the morning's meager supplies before the guard arrives to drive you back. Because at sunrise, the living clamor for everything, even water and hope. You force your legs to move. Every step is a promise to live another day, to tell this story even if there's no one left to hear it. You trudge onward, the mud swallowing your footprints. Each one is a testament to your stubbornness, your refusal to vanish without a witness. And as the village stirs around you, you understand that survival here is more than breath. It's memory. It's defiance. It's the soft footfall of a soul, refusing to be forgotten. You trudge through ankle-deep mud, clutching your bowl like a lifeline. Every step sloshes wet grief through your boots. The early sun, weak as a dying ember, glints off puddles stained dark with last night's rain, and something more sinister you cannot name. You rise a small slope and see the well, a circle of worn stone, slick with moss and half-forgotten prayers that a hush envelopes the gathering crowd. Faces drawn tight with fear, they stand 6 paces from one another, as if the plague might leap on skin-to-skin contact. You join the line, heart pounding so fiercely it might echo across fields. A gaunt man in tattered hose steps aside, coughing, into his sleeve. You wait, watching his sleeve, once white, now streaked with rust and spittle. Your turn comes. You grip the fraying rope and lower the bucket into the blackness. The rope rattles against stone, sounding like distant chains. You count each second, 1, 2, 3, until the clank of wood against stone echoes up. You pull. The bucket resists, as though weighed down by sorrow itself. You tug again, knuckles whitening, until cool water spills into the bucket, rippling like a wounded beast that a hush falls. Everyone watches. You lift the bucket and brace yourself. No one wants to be the first to drink. You peer inside. The water is clear but still. You lean forward, scoop droplets into cupped hands, and bring them to your lips. Chill slices down your throat, sharp as a whip. You swallow, savoring each drop. You close your eyes, half expecting pain, but only cold remains that a cry rips through the still air, a child's voice. You glance up to see a boy, face pinched with fever, staggering toward the well. His mother shouts, but he's already pressed both hands on the stone rim, trying to rise. You consider stepping aside, giving them priority. Yet you feel a tug at your chest. If he drinks that water, he might live another hour. If you don't, you might live longer. You press the bowl against your chest and step back. The boy glugs water recklessly, head thrown back as his mother screams. You watch his cheeks hollow. A shudder catches in your ribs. You clutch your stomach. It twists, not from hunger, but from helplessness. You remember the squeal of the blacksmith's daughter when her fever broke. wet, wild, and wailing in the dirt. You blink, burying that memory before it chokes you. A guard in coarse leather jerkin steps forward. His face is set in hard lines, lines carved by fear and orders. He barks, "Next!" You shuffle forward, heart thudding. You step past the child, untouched by mercy. The mother bows her head, silent tears tracing tracks down her face. You refill your bowl once more, this time slower, savoring the life in each dribble. When it's full, you tug the bucket back, muscles protesting. You almost leave without drinking, but your body buzzes with need. You cup 2 hands of water and sip. It slips cool and neutral, but in this world, neutrality is a blessing. You swallow again, then again. Behind you, someone mutters a prayer. You do not believe, but you nod, because faith is a currency here, worth more than coin, more than garlic, more than noise. You hold the bowl to your chest, water sloshing and clinking, a fragile heart in wood. You step away from the well, aware of every eye following you. Some look with envy, some with accusation. You cannot tell which is worse. You head toward a fallen log to rest, balancing the bowl on your knee. Your fingers hover above the rim, as though you might need to guard it from thieves or angels. The sudden breeze rustles the reeds at the edge of the village spring. You look up, startled. The wind carries whispers of plague houses, a shrill bell. In one town, smoke choking another. You draw a rag from your pocket, wipe the rim of the bowl, and press it to your mouth again. You taste the echo of every villager who drank before you. You taste life. Your legs tremble. You cradle the bowl. To steady yourself, you take one last sip and set it aside. The wood is cold against your palm. Another reminder that warmth here is borrowed, temporary. You stand, the log creaking under your weight. You glance at the last of your village's water. Soon the well will dry. Soon the guard will chase you. Off entirely. You inhale the damp morning air and taste the faint tang of iron. Maybe blood, maybe rust. You tighten your cloak, push hair from your forehead, and walk, leading with one foot, then the other, back toward the churchyard where herbs grow in thin patches. You will trade the remaining water for a handful of parsley or wormwood. You will smear it on your wrists, on your temples, and pray it keeps the fever at bay. Or maybe it is just ritual, or hope. Both are scarce commodities. As you step past the church door, you pause. You look back once at the well, its stones stained. Darker than memory, its depths unknown. You whisper a silent promise to yourself. Survive this day, survive tomorrow, and live long enough to tell this story. With that, you turn and head toward the blackened cross of the churchyard, carrying your bowl and fragile hope into another morning of mud, fear, and necessary defiance. You step into the courtyard of the village healer, a crooked hovel burdened by bundles of drying herbs tied to its beams. A sour tang hangs in the air, like vinegar turned rancid. Inside, the wise woman squats before a boiling cauldron, stirring with a bone-handled stick. Her eyes, ringed with shadows, flick up as you enter, and you catch a glimpse of teeth, blackened by wine and herbs. She beckons you forward, voice raspy as dead leaves. "Another soul seeks salvation," she croaks. You do not dare correct her. Salvation here tastes like mold and desperation. You clutch your bowl of water, hoping she won't demand it for her next potion. Her tiny hands plunge into a sack at her feet. She withdraws a fistful of garlic bulbs, some sprouting green shoots, others shriveled and brown. "Wear this," she whispers, pressing a clove to your neck. The skin beneath your chin burns from the pungent oil. She murmurs words you cannot understand, ancient syllables stripped of meaning by time. You nod, because nodding costs nothing. She tosses more garlic into the cauldron. You lean in. The steam scalds your face. She fishes out a blackened leaf, hands it to you. "Burn this." The smoke chases plague. You take it and cough as ashes drift into your eyes. You squint through tears, nod again, and drop the leaf into a scrap of cloth to smolder later in your hut. Her side. An old man with one eye watches you. He's the village blacksmith. Only smith left alive, they say. He holds a clay jar filled with something dark and sticky. He offers it to you. "Tar. Rub your feet. Keeps cold away." You imagine rubbing oil over your sores, but take the jar anyway. Better to have tar than nothing at all. The wise woman stands and thrusts a leather flask into your hand. Inside, Murky water with twigs floating like drowned rats. Will cleanse. Your blood, she claims. You swallow hard, thinking of the well water you've already drunk twice. You pocket the flask, hoping you'll have the courage to drink it when hunger dulls caution. You turn to leave, but she grabs your arm. Her grip is strong despite her age. She leans close, so you see her one good eye glint in the dim light. Beware. The priest's ashes, she hisses. He burned holy bones in the name of protection. Now plague hides in church walls. You shudder. Ash from walls. You wonder how to scrub invisible death from dead stone. You step back, gathering your spoils. Garlic clove, blackened leaf, jar of tar, flask of murky water. You calculate their worth. Almost nothing. Your stomach growls. She cackles as you leave, voice echoing like church bells over a cemetery. Outside, the sun struggles through heavy clouds. You raise the garlic to your neck again, inhaling its pungent. Bite. You can almost taste rot and sweat. It is hope, however faint. You wrap the blackened leaf in cloth and tuck it into your belt beside the tar jar. Each bundle is a lifeline, and a reminder of how little science knows. You pass the church where the priest stands on the steps, sprinkling holy water on passers-by. He roars about sin and punishment, swinging his censer so that incense drifts. Over the crowd, some bow their heads, others run, unwilling to inhale more smoke. You wonder if the priest's incense is worse than the plague itself. A child squeals in the distance, either in fear or joy. You cannot tell. The child's mother yanks him forward, muttering a prayer. You think of the wise woman's warning, ashes in church walls. You imagine black ash mixed with mortar, hiding in every crevice. You rub your fingertips across a church door's stone, tasting grit and holy dust. Your heart thumps. Fear isn't knowledge, but it drives you as surely as hunger. You bend to scoop a handful of earth, letting it sift through your fingers. The ground feels cool and indifferent. You sift for herbs, yarrow, chamomile, rue. You find a few stray shoots, plucking them and tucking them beside your garlic. These you will brew into tea, though it tastes like dry leaves and desperation. Your cloak flaps as a breeze kicks up. You glance at the horizon. Dark clouds devour the sun. You feel your pulse quicken. Storms chase plague. Too, they say wind brings fresh air. You swallow, wondering if any of this lore holds truth, or if it's all superstition to calm a soul facing death. You press the herbal bundle to your chest and breathe deep. You taste green bitterness, ash, and garlic. You feel the weight of every person who believes these rituals will save them. You imagine centuries of villagers past, each clutching the same remedies as they walked into darkness. Ahead, the village smithy's fire glows, though no metal is being forged. You approach the blacksmith, holding out the tar jar. He nods, dips a finger, and rubs it between his nails. He grunts approval, adds strength. You smear tar across your calves where sores blister. The oil stings, but pain is a friend now. If you feel it, you're alive. You stand, coated in garlic oil, ash, tar, and herbs. You look down at yourself, a walking talisman and a ragged scarecrow. You're covered in every belief this village has scraped together, a patchwork of hope. You are both doctor and patient, healer and doomed. The wind picks up, whipping your cloak around your legs. You steady your feet in the mud, tasting smoke and earth in the air. You imagine the wise woman's cauldron bubbling still, the priest's bell tolling in the churchyard, and the smell of garlic and ashes clinging to everything. You take a step toward the next hut, where a neighbor awaits your herbal brew. You can almost hear her shallow breaths through the wall. You hold your bundle of remedies close and knock. In this world, knocking could mean invitation or farewell, and as you stand in the muddy path, clutching superstitions against an invisible enemy, you know tomorrow you will do it all again. Because in these times, belief is both weapon and shield, and sometimes the only thing between you and the silence that follows the last cough. You hear the church bell toll before you see the smoke. It drifts over crooked rooftops like a dark promise. You press your palm to your mouth, tasting ash and dread. A procession of villagers moves down the main path. Two men dragging a stretcher piled with a body wrapped in canvas, its shape bloated and silent. Behind them, a small crowd follows, heads bowed, eyes hollow. You step aside, mud sucking at your boots as you watch. The stretcher bumps over stones, each jolt sending a tremor through the body. You imagine the corpse's final breath, wet, rattling, gone. You swallow hard, heart pounding. Death here is not a whisper, but a roar, filling lungs with smoke and panic that a child flees past you, tears carving clean tracks through dirt. She runs to her mother, who stands by a cart piled high with belongings, blankets, a cracked jug, a lantern. You know these possessions, they match what you saw in other villages. Those who flee take hope in whatever they can carry, though hope is lighter than a feather and fragile as thin glass. You move closer, compelled by necessity and curiosity. No one stops you. Fear has taught villagers not to intervene. You watch, as the stretcher-bearers lay the canvas bundle beside the newly carved pyre, a crude pile of wood stacked like a morbid throne. A priest in stained robes steps forward, raising a twisted cross. His voice quavers as he intones prayers for the departed. You cannot understand the language, but the words sound like wet cloth against your ears. The crowd steps back. You see a man clutching his wife's hand, white-knuckled and shaking. You see an old woman's stooped shoulders, weighed down not just by years, but by loss. You look for her child, but he is gone, taken by fever last night. You wish you could tell her you are sorry, but words here are as empty as the bell's echo. The priest splashes holy water. It hisses on the canvas, sending a curl of steam into the cold air. You flinch, smelling salt and rot. You wonder if the sprinkling repels plague or invites it to flourish in sanctified air. You imagine the water seeping through fabric, carrying disease in silent droplets that a match is struck. The flame flickers, then leaps to the dry wood. It crackles, hungry. The canvas catches fire, black smoke twisting upward. You feel the heat on your face, taste wood smoke and death. You close your eyes and count the seconds. 1, 2, 3, until the body blurs into ash. When you open your eyes, embers glow red against gray sky. A few villagers applaud softly, relief that one body is gone, but fear it means more will follow. You stand rooted, watching ash drift like snow. You want to turn away, but the spectacle holds you captive. Suddenly, a stench hits your nostrils, sickly, sweet and metallic. You glance at the cart of belongings where the woman stands. She lifts the lid of her jug, takes a sip, and winces. You realize the jug holds not water, but wine. She desperately clings to comfort, a last remnant of joy swallowed in one gulp. You press a hand to your stomach. Hunger gnaws, but you no longer taste emptiness, only the acrid flavor of sorrow. You lower yourself to a nearby stump, fingers, brushing mud and scattered bones. You probe for small comfort, a piece of bread, a morsel of cheese. You find neither. Instead, you find a small metal token, a pilgrim's badge stamped with a saint's face. You slip it into your pocket, hoping. It brings luck where garlic fails. Behind you, the crowd melts away. You remain alone by smoldering pyre, watching embers dance like fireflies trapped in ash. You think of the child, of the old woman, of the countless souls who rest beneath unmarked mounds. You taste their tears in the smoke, their breath in the cinder. A sudden cough breaks the silence. You spin to see the thin man from the well, clutching his leather pouch. His face is paler than dawn light, lips turning blue. He staggers forward, cough bursting in his chest like a storm. You rush to him, but he waves you off. No one wants to share sickness. He grits his teeth, takes a handful of ashes from the pyre, and smears them on his forehead. He bows before stumbling away. You wipe ash from your own skin, mind racing. Plague hides in breath, in water, in ash. It is everywhere and nowhere. You think of your garlic, your moldy herbs, your crude remedies. You wonder if any of it can stop. What creeps beneath skin and bone? You rise, legs trembling. You skirt the pyre and walk toward the fields where crops once grew. Now only wilted stalks tremble in the wind, their roots rotting in poisoned soil. You step among them, toes sinking into mud steeped with decay. You kneel and cup a handful of earth, feeling its cold weight. You taste its bitterness as wind whips grit into your mouth. You stand and head back toward the village entrance. The guard stands idle, watching smoke drift upward. He does not challenge you. He cannot. You pass him in silence, each step a prayer against despair. You tuck your token and herbs deeper into your cloak. You wipe ash from your hands on your leggings, stirring more mud at your knees. As you approach your hut, you see its door draped with cloth, untouched today. Your neighbor's body still lies inside, too weak even for a pyre. You swallow and grip the doorpost. You must find fuel for that fire, for yourself. You draw a rag from your pocket and press it to your mouth, tasting ash and dread. You take a deep breath and step inside, ready to face what death has left behind and what hunger demands next. In the ash-filled gloom, you raise your bowl to the sky, as if pleading with the clouds. Then you move forward into the filth, the suffering, and the stubborn light that refuses to be snuffed out. You hoist your bowl and herbs into your pack, heart pounding like a smith's hammer. Smoke still coils above the pyre, but you dare not linger. Fear and mud cling to you equally, so you choose fear. You step past the churchyard gate, its iron latch cold against your palm, and into the narrow road leading out of town. The path ahead is littered with broken carts, discarded possessions, and footprints that vanish in puddles of filth. A handful of villagers move in the same direction. A woman clutching a frail infant, her eyes hollow with desperation. An old man leaning on a staff carved with pilgrim symbols. Two youths dragging a rickety wagon piled high with blankets and a single pot. They barely glance at you, but you sense their judgment. Survival is not a choice. It is a verdict handed down by hunger and fear. You trample through mud that slurps at your boots, each step a protest. Your cloak, already smeared in ash and garlic oil, now bears streaks of wagon wheel grime and newly trampled earth. You swallow back bile as the cart in front of you groans, its wool teeth missing spokes. The driver swears, then curses the weight of his meager goods. You understand his fury. Hope is a heavy burden when joy has been stolen. Ahead, the road forks. To the left, rolling hills and empty fields. To the right, a forest whose trees huddle together like silent witnesses. You choose the hills, craving open air and sunlight, even if it's thin and gray. The forest feels too much like hiding. The open road, at least, offers a chance to spot plague patrols before they spot you. You pass a broken mile marker, 12 leagues to Milan. You cannot recall how far you've traveled, nor how far you will go. Each league tastes the same: dust, sweat, and fear. You pause to rest on a mossy stone, unwrapping your garlic bundle to inhale its acrid comfort. You bite a clove, the pungent oil burning your tongue. It is both poison and promise. The woman with the infant catches up. The baby's cries echo down the valley, sharp, desperate. She hisses at the child, then presses it to her breast. You wince. Mothers are meant to soothe, not curse. Yet you understand her rage at a world that robs her of rest and safety. You offer a handful of herbs. She snatches them with trembling fingers, presses them to her nose, and breathes deep. You nod, and continued. A sudden rumble makes you look back. A cart piled with bodies barrels down the hill. No driver, only rusted axles. It hits a rock, toppling forward. Corpses spill onto the road, rotting limbs twisting in the mud. You freeze while rising. A rat scurries over a neck, then vanishes into the muck. The infant's cry shreds the air. You pull your cloak tighter, pressing your chest against the hill's cold stone. The old man on the staff leans heavily. His one good eye tracks your movement. He whispers, "Keep moving." You don't know whom he addresses, himself or you, but you take the words as order. You rise, forcing your legs to obey. Each step tastes of lead, but you cannot stop. To halt is to admit defeat. The sky darkens. A sprinkle of rain begins, fat drops that hiss on your cloak. You pause beneath a scraggly tree, letting the woman and child pass. You watch the rain wash away ash from your face, leaving salt-streaked lines. You press knuckles to your forehead, tasting iron and sweat. Your throat tightens. You swallow and step back onto the road. You notice tracks branching off into the fields, faint hoof marks, and the imprint of bare feet. You follow them, hoping to avoid the main road's plague patrols. Your pack catches on brambles, tearing your cloak's hem. You curse under your breath, then smile at your own profanity. Language is a luxury you still possess. Night falls faster here, behind low hills that swallow the light. You press on, guided by distant bells from your former village. Each toll reminds you of every body you left burning. You rub your arms, cold and trembling. Hunger gnaws, but you have no choice. You must reach the next shelter before dawn. Suddenly, you spot a flicker of light in a clearing, a small hut with smoke curling from its chimney. You approach cautiously, senses as sharp as a rat's. No one inside greets you. The door creaks open at your knock. Inside, a single candle glows beside a hearth where leaks bubble and oil. A grizzled man peers at you, eyes wary. You raise your bowl and herbs. He studies your patched cloak, your mud-stained boots, then nods and steps aside. You enter, heart thundering. The door shuts behind you with a finality that smells of safety. Or a trap. You cannot tell. You hold your breath as you set your pack down. The man gestures to a corner. You sit on a rough plank, fingers tracing the grain. The hearth's heat seeps into your bones. You taste smoke and leaks. And, for a fleeting moment, you remember hunger softened by warmth. He hands you a wooden cup. Inside, pale broth, thin as tears. You lift it, let the steam warm your face, then sip. It flows into your stomach like a lullaby, soft and sad. You close your eyes, tasting mercy. You swallow again, certain that tomorrow you will rise, pack, rebundled, and step back into cold and mud. But tonight you have a fire, a stranger's grill, and a breath of quiet. Tomorrow, you will walk again. But for now, you breathe, you taste warmth, and you feel alive. An unlikely blessing in a world shaped by death. You settle beside a sputtering campfire, its embers glowing like wounded eyes in the darkness. Smoke curls into the chill air, carrying the smell of charred wood and desperation. You tug your cloak tighter, pressing your back against a fallen log that still holds warmth. Your heart hammers. Each beat echoes the fear that chased you from village to forest. You reach into your pack and pull out the leather flask of murky water the wise woman gave you. You unscrew the stopper and sniff. Twig fragments bob on the surface, like splinters of forest sorrow. You force yourself to drink. The liquid is warm and terrifyingly sweet, as if fermented. You swallow hard, tasting rot and honey, and wonder if the fermentation killed what little plague lurked inside. You scoot closer to the fire, letting its heat thaw the chill deep in your bones. You fish out the blackened leaf wrapped in cloth and toss it onto the embers. It smokes instantly, acrid, fumes rising in a thin column. You inhale, trying to sense protection in the ritual. Your lungs burn, but you grit your teeth. Pain reminds you you're alive, that a low wind rustles the branches above, and you glance up at shifting shadows. You imagine plague rats skulking beyond the firelight, waiting for the warmth that draws them in. You slam your fist on the log, chasing away the thought. You are no rat. You are flesh and blood, trembling but stubborn. You cradle the clay jar of tar, twisting the lid between calloused fingers. You spread a strip of tar across your forehead, anointing yourself against chill. It sticks to your skin, pulling as you move. You smear more over aching calves, feeling the oils sting against raw sores. Pain courses through you, but it is a familiar companion. You close your eyes and let it anchor you to this moment. Above the crackle of fire, you hear a distant howl, wolf or bandit. You cannot tell. You stiffen, scanning the darkness. The forest seems to lean closer, hungry. You dip into your pack again and pull out the pilgrim's token you found by the pyre. Its carved saint's face catches firelight. You press it to your lips, as if seeking a blessing. You whisper a silent plea. Please, let me live. Memories press in. The burning pyres, the child's scream, the smell of death smoke. You inhale, tasting ash on your tongue. You want to vomit, but you swallow instead, forcing the memory down. You tell yourself that tomorrow you will find better, that the plague cannot follow every hoofprint and footstep. You tell yourself lies. To survive, you notice a cluster of wild onions growing near the fire's edge. Their leaves glow green in the ember light. You stand and approach, pulling a handful. You bite into one, sharp, crisp, a reminder of gardens left behind. You chew slowly, reveling in its clean sting. For a moment, you almost taste home. You hear footsteps on dead leaves. You spin, firelight throwing your shadow large against the trees. A fox, its coat ragged but alive, stops at the fire's periphery. Its eyes glow amber. It tilts its head and watches you. You hold your breath, hand hovering near the tar jar. Then it darts away, disappearing into night. You exhale, chest tight with relief. You settle back down and pull your knees to your chest. You cradle your legs as if holding a child. You remember the mother and infant you passed. You wonder if they found shelter or if the night swallowed them whole. You tighten your cloak against the cold and whisper to the silent woods, "I'm still here." Ash drifts into your hair. You wipe it away, then let it settle. You are part of this world now. You cannot escape ash until your last breath. The fire crackles, orange tongues licking the darkness. You imagine it is your own pulse, flickering between hope and fear. You reach into your pack one last time and grasp the chunk of garlic. You hold it to your chest, then bury it in the ashes. You step back, letting the fire consume it in smoky curls. You close your eyes, listening to the hiss as close char. You imagine each hiss is a prayer, desperate, hot, and fleeting. Fatigue tugs at your eyelids. You lay back on the log, staring at the night sky through bare branches. Stars peek between clouds. You count them, saying each one for a life lost. You breathe shallow, letting the forest lull you into a fragile calm. Your final thought before sleep grips you like cold iron. Tomorrow you will rise, stoke this fire again, and face mud, plague, and fear. But tonight, you live in darkness warmed by flame and the stubborn beat of your heart. Not everyone lived in dirt and silence. Some ruled. Some rewrote the rules, often with iron and ink, while peasants prayed for scraps. Giovanni Visconti was born beneath the arches of a Milanese cathedral. In 1290, destined for the cloth rather than the crown. His family, minor nobility with more ambition than coin, sent him to Rome to study canon law, hoping that holy office would elevate their name. Yet Giovanni's mind was as sharp as the quill he used to copy scriptures. He saw in church politics not only salvation, but power. By 1329, when Pope John XXII appointed him Archbishop of Milan, Giovanni had already earned a reputation for fierce judgment. He preached mercy from the pulpit but enforced tithes with merciless zeal, seizing grain from starving farmers to supply the city's coffers. His hands were guided by faith, but his heart was tempered by pragmatism. Order required both chalice and sword. At first, Giovanni resisted calls to wield temporal authority. He insisted that bishops should pray, not rule. But Milan teetered on the brink of chaos. Families feuded, brigands roamed highways, and tax riots broke out in every district. The city's elders begged him, "Archbishop, we're the mantle of. Lordship, protect us." Reluctantly, he accepted the ducal title in 1339, trading his mitre for a steel helm. From that moment, Giovanni's dual nature took shape. He walked chapel aisles in flowing robes one morning and reviewed battle plans in war rooms the next. His clerical staff recorded baptisms by candlelight. His retinue counted bloodied spears at dawn. He ruled with sermons and sent emissaries. With swords, a contradiction that haunted allies and enemies alike. Under his watch, Milan fortified its walls, carving watchtowers from rubble and ramparts from earth. He taxed merchants to rebuild city gates and ordered the construction of hospitals, though entry was barred to peasants. Artisans praised his patronage, scholars lauded his libraries, but the poor whispered curses under breath. They saw charity as another levy, mercy as yet another expense. When the Black Death appeared on Italy's shores in 1347, Giovanni faced his greatest trial. He ordered ring bells to ring at every hour, convinced sound could ward off pestilence. He declared holy processions through the streets, carrying relics and banners, an army of prayer meant to repel death. Some villagers cried relief, others vomited on cathedral steps, convinced the pageantry invited rather than imprisoned the plague. As bodies piled in narrow lanes, Giovanni's resolve hardened. He imposed strict quarantine measures. Infected homes were sealed, families confined, without food or fire. At first, some believed this act of cruelty saved lives. Those outside their walls remained unscathed. But rumors spread of anguished screams trapped behind brick doors. Mercy, he taught, required sacrifice, another contradiction for a man of God. Behind closed doors, Giovanni wrestled with guilt. He visited plague wards at night, slipping past guards to pour oil into lamps and whisper comfort to fevered souls. His own hands grew calloused from both blessing and branding. He wept beside dying farmers and prayed for forgiveness before altars. Gilded with wealth, he helped amass that by 1350, Milan's death toll was lower than in neighboring cities. Historians credit his stern policies. Poets credit his clandestine kindness. Yet his legacy was stained by ash, smoke from pyres and tears from mothers whose doors he ordered sealed. He emerged as savior to some, tyrant to many, a man stitched together from devotion and dread. When Giovanni died unexpectedly in 1354, perhaps from illness, perhaps from grief, Milan mourned with both candlelit vigils and silent relief. His tomb bears an inscription: "He who judged with mercy and ruled with force." In death, he achieved the final contradiction: a bishop and a warlord, a healer and a harbinger. Giovanni Visconti's life stands as testament to power's paradox. To save some, you may damn others. To lead, you may have to follow the darker impulses within. His rise from reluctant cleric to iron-fisted duke shaped Milan's fate, and ensured that when the plague recedes, his shadow will linger longer than any prayer. By late 1347, news of the Black Death had rattled every port along the Mediterranean. Genoa and Venice lay crippled under cartloads of bodies. Merchants fled, leaving ships anchored like hollow carcasses. Milan's gates snapped shut under Visconti's orders before the first sails reached Lake Como. The city, cloaked in stone walls and vigilance, believed itself protected until the plague found a way in. It began with a caravan from Provence, laden with fine cloth and embroidered purses. Traders arrived at Porta Romana beneath banners reading Pax et Prosperitas. They carried coin, cloth, and infected fleas hitching rides in the folds of silk. Milanese guards, trained to detect hidden knives and stolen goods, overlooked invisible stowaways. Within days, the traders coughed in market squares, hands pressed to mouths stained with dark blood. In the narrow lanes of the Contrada della Maddalena, the first victim collapsed outside a tavern. Bernardo, a baker's apprentice, gasped with every breath, eyes bulging like marbles. Neighbors gathered, curious and cruel. They poked his flannel tunic, seeking signs of life. When his skin bloomed with black pustules, fear ignited. A mob formed, torches raised, blaming foreign merchants for bringing death. Visconti, seated in his ducal palace beneath frescoed ceilings, received the news with measured calm. He convened the Consiglio Magnifico, Milan's ruling council of nobles, clergy, and wealthy merchants. Candles guttered as he spoke. "We must act swiftly. Seal the gates. Quarantine the sick. Pray for mercy." His voice carried authority, but behind the mask of resolve, his fists clenched, knowing that every decree carried its own peril. By dawn, Porta Romana and 5 satellite gates were barred. Guards stood shoulder to shoulder, halberds planted in mud. No traveler, no beggar, no traitor, regardless of purse or plea, could pass. The nuns at San Celso begged entry with stamps of holy relics, but guards refused them as they had refused nobles. A strict rule: disease knows no rank. Inside the walls, panic unfurled like a dark banner. Merchants demanded refunds. Artisans hid in workshops, abandoning looms and anvils. Servants slipped away at night, leaving estates empty. Some families bricked their doors from the inside, sealing loved ones with the sick. Smoke rose in black columns from makeshift pyres built in empty courtyards, towers of wood and silent prayer. Visconti's quarantine edict mandated that any household reporting infection would be sealed for 40 days. Guards affixed painted crosses on doors, red for confirmed, yellow for suspected. No food, no fire, no escape. Some barricades held. Others crumbled under howls of starvation. City records mention wails echoing through stifled windows, dogs and children alike pleading for mercy. Meanwhile, Visconti repurposed convents and empty palazzos as plague hospitals. He commissioned physicians from Bologna and Padua, though few dared to treat the sick. Those who did risked their own lives. Treatments ranged from bloodletting beneath trees to fumigation with juniper branches. Patients coughed into linen masks stuffed with cloves and rose petals, believing scent repelled death. Outside the walls, disease festered in the countryside. Peasants fleeing Milan brought infection to hamlets nestled among vineyards. By Christmas, Of 1,347, reports of death reached Pavia and Cremona. Visconti dispatched envoys to neighboring lords, urging them to close borders and share remedies, or at least bear witness to his policies. Some complied, others sneered, suspecting Milan's measures a bid for power, not compassion. Inside the city, public life fell silent. Bells tolled at all hours, summoning both prayer and panic. Merchants draped black cloth over shop windows. Streets emptied of carts. Markets moved to fields outside the walls, where traders left goods at dawn and fled by night. The rich retreated to countryside villas. The poor huddled in cramped alleys, trading whispers of divine punishment. At the height of the outbreak in spring 1348, Milan recorded more than 200 burials a day, triple its usual rate. Gravediggers, paid in piecework, abandoned mass graves for speed. Priests recited last rites through open windows. Mothers dropped infants at convent doors, disappearing before anyone noticed. The city's heart beat in fever and fear, yet amid the chaos, Visconti held firm. He ordered city guards to patrol for hoarded grain and extortionate pricing. He fed paupers at public granaries and oversaw the distribution of cheap wine by the amphora. He rode through plague wards at night, masked, robed, and resolute, stroking foreheads, carrying lit candles, promising absolution. Even his critics whispered that his presence brought calm, if not cure. As summer waned, the death rate slowed. The walls, once equal parts fortress and prison, became the thin line between ruin and refuge. By autumn, Milan's toll, though staggering, remained lower than Genoa's. Chroniclers credited Visconti's stringent controls, his blend of fear and charity. Yet his legacy was double-edged, a city spared, a people scarred. When the gates finally reopened in November 1348, Milan emerged into a changed world. Streets bore the scars of pyres. Churches bristled with memorial plaques. Survivors stumbled out like ghosts, bodies hollowed by fever and grief. Giovanni Visconti stood atop the battlements, gazing at fields once green, now trampled by woe. He inhaled deep, tasting ash and relief. He had saved his city, but at a cost written in the lines of every survivor's face, Giovanni Visconti's. Reign was marked by an uneasy balance between compassion and cruelty, acts of mercy as sharp as the swords he commanded. In late 1348, when the plague's second wave crept back to Milan, he issued an unprecedented decree. All widows and orphans of plague victims would receive free grain and medical care from ducal coffers. This act of charity sounded a hopeful note across the city's cobbled lanes. Yet within days, the hollowed faces at soup kitchens grew even more desperate, for charity needed administration, and administration bred corruption. His officials, underpaid and terrified, began diverting grain to favored nobles. Orphans waited in long lines under winter's chill, teeth chattering, while carts laden with grain rolled toward lavish estates. Giovanni discovered the theft when a ragged band of peasants marched to the palace gates, howling for bread. He watched from a balcony as they pelted soldiers with crusts of stale bread. For a moment, he hesitated. Mercy demanded forgiveness. Instead, he ordered his guards to form ranks. He rode out that night, torch in hand, and distributed grain personally to those he could find on the streets. The act was both penance and proclamation. Mercy would flow from his hand, not through crooked fingers. Simultaneously, he clung to darker measures. Reports reached him of dissidents, priests denouncing his quarantine, merchants hoarding medication, noblemen challenging ducal authority. Visconti convened a secret council in the Palazzo della Ragione, chambers lit by flickering torches. He signed warrants to arrest 15 individuals, for priests accused of heresy, 3 apothecaries accused of poisoning wells, and 8 nobles accused of sedition. Publicly, he proclaimed these measures necessary to preserve order and health. Privately, he reveled in the power to decide who lived and who died. One notorious case involved Brother Matteo, a Franciscan friar who had tended the sick in San Marco's courtyard. The friar's gentle hands and whispered prayers earned him fame and suspicion. Rumor said he healed so many that the boundless gratitude of survivors made him a threat to Visconti's fame. Giovanni dispatched guards at dawn. They dragged Matteo from his cell and tried him for practicing medicine without license, consorting with spirits, and undermining ducal decrees. The trial lasted 1 day. 8 witnesses, all fearful, 1 sympathetic juror, silenced by guards. Matteo was condemned to death by burning, his ashes scattered in the river. News of the execution rippled through Milan like poison. Some cheered, "No, heretic shall hide plague in prayer." Others wept, clutching crucifixes and begging for their friar's salvation. Visconti, hearing both cheers and laments, held a mass offering for Matteo's soul, blending remorse with triumph. His actions blurred lines: healer and heretic, tyrant and penitent. Meanwhile, in the city's outskirts, Visconti's mercy took different shape. He funded clandestine compassion chapters, groups of women from noble families who tended the dying in secret plague houses. They wore no masks, offered only comfort, and charged nothing. When word of their work spread, Giovanni ordered them protected under ducal decree, warning that any harm to these nurses would be met with swift justice. He provided them keys to quarantined homes, silk for masks, and small stipends for food, tokens of the mercy he both dispersed and tightly controlled. His dual policies extended to the dead. In spring 1349, samples of plague victims' blood, drawn under the supervision of ducal physicians, were preserved in glass vials marked with gold seals. Scholars in the Visconti library studied them by candlelight, charting patterns of fever and bleeding. These jars became relics of scientific curiosity and symbols of Visconti's command over life and death. He kept them locked in an iron cabinet, accessible only by his royal signet. By mid-1350, Milan's plague toll had begun to decline, yet the city simmered with resentment and relief. Nobles who praised his hospitals damned his arrests. Peasants blessed his granaries and cursed his fires. Giovanni walked a narrow line, preaching mercy 1 day, signing death warrants the next. His own conscience bore the scars. He suffered nightmares of trial scenes, bodies stacked like wood, and the mute faces of orphans on the final night of his life. Giovanni visited the plague chapel he built near Porta Orientale. It was a simple stone shelter with a carved relief of the Madonna and Child. He lit a single candle and placed it on the altar, then knelt. For hours, he prayed for forgiveness, for the souls he saved and the souls he sacrificed. Outside, embers from nearby pyres glowed against the city walls. At dawn, he rose, dusted off his robes, and left the chapel without looking back. When news of his death spread in 1354, Milan's citizens, rich and poor, held simultaneous ceremonies, masses for his salvation, bonfires for his memory. His epitaph read, "He showed mercy with one hand and raised the sword with the other." In the end, the city's survival owed as much to his ruthless decrees as to his boundless charity. The paradox of mercy and murder defined his reign and shaped Milan's destiny long after the plague's final echo faded. When Giovanni Visconti died in the chill of February 1354, Milan stood transformed. His funeral cortege snaked through streets still scarred by plague pyres, passing beneath walls reforged in wartime haste. Commoners peered from shuttered windows, clutching crosses and stolen bread, while nobles in velvet cloaks lowered their heads in silent tribute. Amid the hush, the city mourned a savior and a tyrant, two faces locked in an indelible paradox. Giovanni's tomb, carved of black marble and set within the Duomo's shadowed crypt, bore a single inscription: "He who judged with mercy and ruled with force." Beneath that, an epitaph listed his deeds: hospitals founded, walls reinforced, granaries stocked, and the city delivered from the scourge. But no mention was made of seal-shut houses or burned heretics. Those chapters remained unspoken, kept alive only in whispered rumors that in the years that followed, Milan's population rebounded slowly. Streets once lined with corpses saw children's bare feet. Market stalls groaned under the weight of coin and grain. Yet beneath the revival lay a lingering tension. Families whose doors had been bricked shut never forgot the screams behind sealed walls. Orphans who received grain carried the stain of charity administered by fear. Scholars studied Giovanni's plague jars, debating whether they contained cure or curse. His successors wrestled with his legacy. Galeazzo II, his nephew, sought to soften the ducal image by abolishing public executions and opening infirmaries to all faiths. He ordered memorial chapels for victims, commissioning reliefs that depicted peasants feeding each other in compassionate circles. Still, he kept the walls and gates closed in seasons of disease. Giovanni's harsh quarantine measures were too effective to abandon. Chroniclers painted portraits of Visconti that varied by patron. Monks in San Ambrogio celebrated him as God's instrument, a bishop who wielded plague like a divine scourge against sin. Mercenary captains described him as a commander who knew that a city's health was as vital as its defenses. Street poets, however, sang of the Black Archbishop, whose ash-smeared sermons bled into every corner of Milan. Long after his death, the ducal library housed dozens of anonymous treatises debating his morality. One text, De Plaga et Potestate, argued that only ruthless authority could save a city from pestilence. Another, De Misericordia et Cruz, contended that mercy without justice was hollow. These volumes, locked behind iron doors, became pilgrim sites for students of power and disease. Across northern Italy, rulers studied Milan's ordeal. In Florence, they planted olive groves around their walls to symbolize peace and to mask the stench of death. In Venice, doges ordered gondoliers to row bodies to remote islands, an echo of Milan's pyre fields. Everywhere, Giovanni's example loomed, a template of command in crisis, a warning of how salvation can carry the stain of blood. Even in popular memory, his name conjured contradictions. Mothers whispered his name both to comfort sick children, Giovanni's mercy watches over you, and to frighten misbehaving ones. Giovanni's guards will seal our door at dawn. The image of the Archbishop Duke persisted in folk tales, a robed figure handing bread from one hand, a sword from the other, his eyes both gentle and stern. By the 15th century, plague returned in waves, but Milan faced it with both hospitals and inquisitors. Citizens adjusted prayers to include both saints and magistrates. In their homes, families hung garlic alongside crucifixes, blending superstition with faith. In city halls, officials balanced grain distribution against quarantine orders. The blueprint was Giovanni's, etched into law and legend, yet beneath every revival lay a question: at what cost does survival come? The city's stones held stories of both mercy and murder. The Duomo's rubble whispered of bricked-in families. The emptied convents echoed with abandoned vows. And in forgotten corners, pilgrims still pressed coins into the hands of plague jars, tangible proof that disease could be catalogued, controlled, but never conquered. Giovanni's legacy endured as a cautionary tale for those who would wield power in plague shadow. Leaders learned that compassion without oversight led to corruption, and that draconian rule bred both efficiency and resentment. They learned that when death stalks the streets, every decree becomes a double-edged blade. Centuries later, as scholars uncovered his tomb beneath layers of soot and devotion, they found not the opulence they expected, but the simple iron fetters once used to seal plague houses, and a tattered scrap of cloth embroidered with a single word: remember. It was neither saintly relic nor ducal seal, but a reminder that history's greatest leaders leave behind both salvation and scars. But while kings and queens shaped history above ground, something buried far beneath was waiting to be found. In the chill of an autumn morning in 1997, a backhoe's arm tears through ancient soil behind the crumbling walls of St. Ethelfrith's Abbey. The air hangs heavy with mist and the tang of wet stone. Workers pause, breath visible in the cold light, as metal scrapes against bone. Faint, hollow, unmistakable. They uncover a shallow pit, its edges lined with slate fragments, and with it, hundreds of human remains jumbled like forgotten relics. You stand at the edge, the pit yawning before you, its darkness deeper than any midnight. The first skeleton emerges, a thigh bone still clinging to sinew, brittle and pale as moth wings. Next, a cranium, its eye sockets empty yet accusing, as if demanding you listen to voices long silent. The soil is rich and loamy, stained with iron echoes of blood, pressing into every crevice of bone. As daylight broadens, archaeologists sweep away earth with fine brushes. Each stroke reveals fragments of clothing, button molds, strips of wool, even a threadbare hem. You kneel, heart fluttering, and uncover a ring. Simple iron, twisted by hand, engraved with a faded saint's symbol. You lift it to your eyes. It feels impossibly heavy, as though carrying the burden of every soul buried here. The pit's form is deliberate. 2 parallel trenches, 30 feet long, 6 feet deep. Bodies lie in rows, feet toward the west, as if marching toward an unseen horizon. No coffins, no markers, just earth piled atop flesh, a mass burial when individual funerals became impossible. You trace with your fingertip the curve of a rib, still warm from the morning sun. You swallow, tasting soil and sorrow. One skeleton stands apart. A woman, her bones arranged with care. A flat stone slab under her head, upon which rests a small wooden box, its lid carved with a fleur-de-lis. You gently lift the box and find it lined with faded velvet. Inside, a silver ring set with black enamel, an etched key, and a rosary bead carved from bone. Her hands, positioned as if in prayer, hold a sprig of rosemary petrified by time. The sight makes your chest tighten. This was no common burial. She was chosen, honored, even in death. You stand and survey the pit's perimeter. Scattered among common bones are shards of pottery stamped with noble arms, a child's copper whistle, and a handful of leather clogs. Someone, perhaps the abbey's steward, buried these items with thought. You imagine a silent ritual, cloaked figures moving beneath flickering torchlight, laying peasants and pilgrims side by side. The contrast of wealth and poverty, honored, dead and cast-off corpses, speaks of a story never written. The lead archaeologist raises a gloved hand for quiet. She reads from a parchment, records of an abbey plague pit, its last mention in 1350. The chronicles speak of sisters of charity, nun healers who tended the dying, then vanished without record. Some say they were interred in consecrated ground. Others whisper they were entombed alive to contain infection. You feel the air constrict. Truth may lie buried here, yet fear still clings like IV wide at AS trowels unearth more remains. You notice patterns on some skulls, small gouges where surgeons attempted trepanation, perhaps to drain fever. A few femurs bear blunt force marks, not from violence, but from hurried tool strikes, reshaping bone to fit earth. You realize this was not only mass burial. It was a last rite, a communal crucible of life and death. The wind stirs fallen leaves beyond the pit's edge. You shiver, though your coat is thick. You imagine those buried felt something similar as they lay here, breathing their final breaths in damp darkness. You taste their fear in the soil, their hope in the sprinkled herbs. A camera clicks as photographs are taken. Each image captures the pit's grim symmetry, the woman's silver ring, the layer of clay mortar sealing this grave for centuries. Yet no photograph can hold the weight of silence you feel now, an absence louder than any bell. You step back as the team begins measuring and mapping bones. Lines of string crisscross the earth in perfect grid. Each bone will be cataloged, carbon dated, analyzed for traces of plague bacteria. Soon, science will speak. DNA sequences, isotope ratios, microbial fingerprints. But you know science cannot capture ritual's poetry. The rosemary placed for memory, the iron ring for love, the unknown. None buried upright like a sentinel. The lead archaeologist kneels by the woman's grave, brushing back hair preserved in soil fibers. The locks are auburn, a stark contrast to the gray bones. You watch her place a white rose beside the skull, petals trembling in the breeze. For the forgotten healer, she whispers. You feel the words linger in dawn's chill, a testament to nameless courage. As the pit is documented and backfilled for later study. You step away, boots muffled in mud. You glance once more at the ground where history broke open. Under your feet lies a tapestry of pain and devotion, of desperation and design. You carry with you the hush of bones and the glint of silver in dim earth. Tomorrow, scholars will write papers and draw conclusions. Tourists will whisper of cursed grounds. But tonight, you hold evidence of a story lost to time. A silent nun in a mass grave, her story etched in iron and rosemary, waiting for its voice to rise again. Since its excavation, the plague pit has been shrouded in stories as much as soil. Some locals whisper that the pit was not simply a burial ground, but a site of ritual atonement. They claim that the abbey's abbess, Sister Elswith, ordered her own sisters buried alive to contain the contagion, an act of martyrdom unrecorded in official chronicles. One legend tells of an underground chapel hidden beneath the pit, where chants once echoed through candlelit corridors. Villagers say moonlight dances on unseen frescoes, and if you press an ear to the earth at midnight, you can hear ghostly hymns mingled with the rasp of rats. No map marks this chapel, yet treasure hunters have scoured the site, finding nothing but broken beams and stained bones. Another theory suggests the woman with the silver ring was a healer persecuted as a witch. The ring's black enamel, some say, was enchanted to protect against demonic possession, common belief when plague deaths outpaced clergy's explanations. The rosemary in her hands was not only for remembrance, but as a ward against evil. People point to scorch marks on nearby stones, claiming they are evidence of past burnings. Flames meant to cleanse both body and soul. A third myth speaks of a secret society, the Plague Watchers, who used the abbey's crypts to study the disease. In silence, according to this tale, they preserved plague victims' blood in vials, later discovered in hidden niches under altar stones, to unlock the secrets of immunity. When their experiments failed, they vanished in a single night, leaving behind jars of blackened liquid and tomes of unreadable script. Modern scholars dismiss these stories as fanciful, yet each theory persists in local folklore and travel guides alike. Tourists snap photos of the sealed pit, then post Instagram stories about curses and hidden vaults. Paranormal investigators rig EMF meters around the excavation perimeter, claiming to detect cold spots where monks once performed last rites. Anthropologists note that such myths serve a deeper purpose. They give voice to collective trauma, transforming anonymous death into narratives of sacrifice, heroism, or conspiracy. The truth, as always, slips between fact and fable, woven into rosemary sprigs, ink-blotted manuscripts, and whispered prayers at dusk. Still, some tangible traces refuse to disappear. The ring's enamel, tested by archaeologists, contains trace amounts of silver from local mines, not distant imports, as would befit a noble's trinket. The charcoal beneath suspected burn marks contains human bone fragments, suggesting pyres burned too close to the chapel walls. Even the EMF readings, while inconclusive, spike when any researcher crosses the pit's threshold, an odd footnote in scientific journals. Whether ritual, myth, or accident, the pit's secrets have become part of its legacy. Each bone is a verse in an unwritten chant, each shard of pottery a symbol in a silent prayer. In the gap between legend and archaeology, the plague pit remains both a tomb and a story yet to be finished. Underneath centuries of dust and devotion lies the tale of an all-female order once sworn to compassion and silence. In the abbey's faded registers, a single line hints at their existence. Sisters of the Silent Rose, licensed in 1335 to tend the plague-stricken in secret. No deeds, no names, no elegies, only that laconic entry. Yet bones and soil preserve echoes of their ritual. You imagine the sisters slipping through moonlit cloisters, hoods low, lantern light flickering on carved stone. Their hands, gentle as dew on petals, lifted fevered heads and fed spoonfuls of herbal tea to gasping sinners. In the pit you excavated, soil around the mass burial bears faint traces of rose petals. Petals that, upon analysis, match local wild varieties known for antiseptic oils. These blooms, woven into crowns and strewn at feet, were more than decoration. They were both medicine and prayer in petal form. On one side of the pit, you uncover a cluster of small ceramic bowls, each colored by residue of lavender, chamomile, and rue. You brush away earth and lift a bowl to your nose. Though centuries have passed, you detect an almost floral sweetness under layers of rot. You imagine a sister kneeling by a dying man, whispering words of comfort as she poured tea into his trembling lips. Her robes would have brushed damp earth, and the patient's final sight might have been stained hymns and bowed head. Adjacent to the bowls lie 3 iron crosses, unadorned, rusted, yet elegant in their plain geometry. You press one to your palm. Its weight surprises you. Each cross bears faint hammer marks, as though forged in haste and with devotion. You chart the cross's positions, one by the head of a man aged 40, one by a woman in her 20s, one by a child no older than 10. The arrangement suggests ritual placement, a triad of souls watched over by the sisters as they passed beyond breath. In the abbey's crypt, hidden beneath loose tiles, you uncover faded mural fragments, the silhouettes of cloaked figures bearing candles, standing before a mass of bodies without distinction. Scrollwork entwines skulls and roses, an emblem you recognize from a scrap of parchment in the ducal archive. The manuscript labels the symbol Veritas et Pietas, truth and devotion. Here, painted in muted pigments, lies the order's true seal, a silent vow to honor every victim equally. A single ledger, charred but legible, emerges from beneath collapsed masonry. Its leather cover bears no title. Inside, careful script records daily ministrations. May 3rd, 1348. Sister Matilda dispensed balm to 6 in-house patients. 2 succumbed. May 4th, 1348. Sister Cecily provided linen for head wounds. Prayers offered at dawn and dusk. Entries continue until June 12th, when the ink smudges into tears. After that date, pages are blank, as though the sisters simply vanished. Rumors say they retreated into the earth, joining their flock in the plague pit to avoid spreading infection beyond cloister walls. Others whisper they were cast out by the abbot, accused of witchcraft for defying divine will. Local lore speaks of their final vigil, a torchlit procession descending rickety stairs into subterranean tunnels, chants echoing off cold stone, ending with heavy doors sealing behind them. No one heard them again. Your trowel pauses over a clump of hair preserved in mortar, auburn strands braided and knotted, perhaps a nun's habit scraped away in frenzy. You brush gently, revealing a copper pendant, a small rose pressed into metal. You cradle it like a prayer, imagining the sister who wore it pinned over her heart, carrying both fear and hope as plague's shadow closed in. Across the chamber, you find a patch of ochre-stained wall where shapes bloom under ultraviolet light. A trio of figures with outstretched hands, offering bowls of liquid to a line of skeletal bodies. The colors, once vibrant reds and golds, have faded to earth tones, but their meaning remains. Sister healers offering last rites beneath painted arches, a silent service beneath the roar of death above. The air in the crypt feels heavy, as though layered with centuries of incense and grief. You set down your brush and listen. In the hush, you swear you hear distant chanting, half prayer, half lament, carried on a current you cannot see. You catch your breath and step back, heart thrumming. Science cannot explain the echo of voices in empty stone, but the crypt holds them still. In your lab, you analyze pollen grains from the crypt floor, roses, yarrow, and lesser-known iris species, valued for antiseptic compounds. The order's founder, Sister Avellini, is said to have compiled an herbal tome lost to fire. These pollen traces may be the only surviving fragments of her work. You wonder if one day you might reconstruct her recipes, breathe life back into remedies crushed beneath plague's weight. By the pit, you press your gloved hand to cooler soil, a silent tribute to those who lived and died under sisterly care. You plant a single rose cutting at the edge of the excavation, hope entwined with memory. You whisper a vow to honor their truth and devotion, to give voice to silence that centuries tried to bury. As you prepare to move on, you pause at the crypt's threshold. The air shifts, a faint warmth at your back. You turn, expecting a lantern or a scholar, but see only empty corridors. You step outside into fading daylight, carrying with you petals pressed in damp notebooks, sketches of faded murals, and the weight of unsung sacrifice. The order's story remains half-hidden, in soil, in script, in whispers. Yet every artifact, every pollen grain, and every echo in stone speaks of women who refuse to abandon the dying. Their devotion is etched in petal and bone, a testament that even in mass death, compassion can leave a trace. Symbols carved in bone and inked in history lead us deeper, toward a grave sealed in ritual and mystery, where symbols speak louder than words. Beneath the slate slabs and loamy earth, Symbols lie etched not in parchment, but in bone and soil. You return at dawn, lantern in hand, to study a cluster of remains arranged with uncanny deliberation. Here, bodies lie in a radial pattern, heads forming a circle around one central skeleton, as though offering homage to an unseen core. Around their skulls, you discover rings of crushed stone and powdered pigments, reds from iron oxide, yellows from ochre, and deep blues from ground azurite. The colors cling to edges of bone, like ancient runes glowing in the half-light. You brush away soil from the central skeleton's collarbone, revealing a series of small perforations, 5 evenly spaced holes, each the diameter of a quill. You follow the sequence. They trace the path of the Pleiades across the winter sky. Nearby, you note a fragment of pottery painted with the same star cluster, its curves matching the holes. You cup the bone, feeling the weight of a cosmos mapped on flesh. The dead here were not cast aside. They were inscribed with meaning. To the east of the radial circle, you find a shallow groove carved into the earth, thin as a hairline but deliberate. Inside this channel lie small pebbles, each engraved with simple symbols: a crescent moon, a stylized wave, a triangular mountain. They appear to chart the peasant's world: night, river, hill. You collect a pebble and hold it up. The moon's arc glints with residual mineral dust. You imagine a soul's journey, from the hill-bound fields to the river's cleansing flow. Under the watchful moon, you whisper their names, though history has long since stolen them. Between two bodies, you uncover a trio of feathers, long, bleached white, bound at the quill with horsehair. The feathers radiate from the central skeletons, hips fanning outward. Under ultraviolet light, faint hues emerge, violet tips and golden shafts. Avian symbols in medieval lore signify both messengers and souls in flight. Here, they suggest that the buried were meant to transcend Earth's grip, rising on wings of ritual to somewhere beyond plague's grasp. That on the central skeletons. Sternum rests a flat stone disc, no larger than a coin, etched with a labyrinth. You trace its path, a single unbroken line spiraling inward to a dot at the center. Labyrinths were pilgrimage icons, representing inward journeys of penance and revelation. But here they lay on flesh, as if the buried peasant undertook a final pilgrimage within their own body. You wonder if this was an act of hope, that even in death, one might wander through hardship to find peace at the heart. Interspersed among bones are tiny vials of glass, some intact, others shattered. Inside the whole vials, you find residue of bright green powder. Chemical analysis later reveals traces of malachite mixed with sulfur, an alchemical blend believed to purify air and spirit. The shattered vials, turned black by Earth's pressure, suggest ritual breakage, a final release. Of protective charms, you hold a vial against your ear. It crinkles softly, as though whispering secrets from centuries past. At the southern edge of the grave, you uncover a line of iron nails hammered first into the soil. Each nail's head is inscribed with a rune-like mark, barely legible, 3 strokes converging at a point. In medieval symbology, these marks warded off evil spirits and sealed pacts. You remove one nail and note rust patterns shaped like blood veins. You press the nail to your palm, as though feeling the covenant between life and death, a promise that even in plague's shadow, boundaries could be drawn and sanctity preserved. Near the central skeleton's feet, you find a fragment of embroidered cloth, its pattern a delicate loop of interlaced threads. The motif mirrors the iron labyrinth disc above, a testament that textile and metalwork shared symbolic language. You press the cloth to your cheek, inhaling musty linen and spores. You imagine a peasant mother weaving that stitch on her daughter's tunic, later used here to wrap a wrist. Even in mass death, small comforts were preserved. You step back and sketch the grave's layout in layered diagrams, a cosmos of bone and relics, a map of ritual geometry. You map the pigment rings, the pebble channels, the feather ferns, the labyrinth stone, the nail array, the alchemical vials, and the embroidered fragment. Each element rests in deliberate relation to the others, no random scattering here. The mass pit is a sacrament, a silent liturgy written in artifacts and flesh. You recall local lore of the plague watchers, their blood vials, and secret experiments. Yet these symbols speak of something older, a folk faith that fused Christian iconography with pagan rites. Crosses carved into skulls appear alongside labyrinths. Rosary beads lie near feather quills. The buried bodies become texts, each symbol a letter, each arrangement a sentence in a story of devotion. By midday, sunlight wanes through a dull sky. You wipe your brush on a rag and circle the central pit one last time. You scoop a handful of earth, letting red ochre dust sift through your fingers. It drifts to the bones below, settling like a benediction. You realize this earth is part of the ritual too, soil and pigment, clay and blood, all bound in memory. You mark the pit for further excavation, careful to preserve the symbolic relationships. When the layers are recorded and lifted, you stand aside and let the archaeologists photograph the tableau. You watch relics laid out on white cloth: nails, stones, feathers, pigments, cloth, bones. Each becomes evidence of a peasant's final hope, that through symbols, colors, shapes, materials, they might speak to future generations. That as you leave the site, you pause at the edge of the grave. A single feather, dislodged in your work, lies atop the mound. You pick it up and tuck it into your coat. It is too fragile to display, yet too potent to discard. You feel its weight against your chest, a reminder that symbols endure when words fade. The plague pit, once seen as mass death's indiscriminate tomb, stands transformed, a sacred space, rich with coded messages in earth and bone. Its symbolism weaves a tapestry of belief, binding the living and the dead in an unspoken covenant of memory. Even as time buries these graves again, the symbols remain, etched in pigment, iron, and feather, for those who know how to read them. Night falls. As you return to the abbey ruins, lantern in hand, guiding your steps across shattered tiles and moss-clad walls. Here, the plague pit lies silent beneath the earth, a sealed cathedral of memory. You kneel at the edge of the mass grave, tracing the rim of stone slabs that still form a crude altar. Each slab is etched with the scratch of centuries, footsteps, tool marks, perhaps prayers turned to nothing. You brush away a layer of loose soil to reveal engraved crosses along the slab's edges, crude but deliberate. Their forms vary, some simple Latin lines, others Celtic loops entwined with rosemary sprigs. You imagine hands, once skeletal, pressing tokens against stone, begging for mercy. Silence here is heavier than stone itself, a hush that presses on your eardrums and leaves your breath shallow. Fingers ghost over a carved inscription in Lombard script. In silent graves, we speak in stones. You lean closer. The letters blur until you steady your gaze. The phrase feels less like an epitaph and more a covenant, that those buried beneath this altar would tell their story, but only through earth and rock. You shift your lantern beam. Over the pit's rim, pebbles from the radial burial lie scattered like pale tears. You gather one, smooth, stained ochre, and press it against the stone edge where similar pebbles were once nestled. You feel its cool weight, as if holding a whispered secret. You place it back, aligning it with the engraved cross above. In this act, you become part of the ritual, a living witness adding your own stone to the silent choir beyond the slabs. The ground is bare except for clumps of wild rosemary, their silvery leaves glowing in lamplight. You crouch and gently tug one, roots clinging to damp earth. As you lift it, you notice faint carvings on a stone marker half buried beside the pit, a labyrinth pattern matching the central skeleton's disc. Here, stone mirrors body, echoing the pilgrimage inward. You cradle the rosemary and let it scent. Drift upward, minted sorrow carried on night air. You survey the ruined cloister walls that ring the grave, arches framing darkness. Moonlight seeps through gaps where roof beams collapsed, casting broken patterns on stone. In one archway, you spot a mosaic of tesserae, pale blues and reds still glinting, tracing the outline of an angel poised above a tomb. The angel's wings arc downward, as if to shelter the pit itself. You run your palm over the mosaic, each tile a frozen note in this silent hymn. A cold breeze stirs, rattling your lantern and sending leaves skittering across flagstones. You stand and move along the cloister's inner walkway, stepping over fallen capitals and column fragments. Your footsteps echo, first loud, then swallowed by emptiness. Here, absence feels alive. Every shattered pillar is a testament to those who once offered prayers above the buried dead. You find an intact column stump carved with a depiction of hands clasped in prayer. Below it, a chipped inscription reads, "Hear me beyond stone." You pause, pressing both hands to the carving, as though drawing warmth from prayer itself. You whisper into the night, voicing your vow to remember. Voices lost may dwell in silence, but through stone they speak again. At the center of the cloister, where the nave once stood, a single pile of rubble marks the site of the old altar. You clear stones until you reveal a flat slab bearing concentric circles, the same pigment rings found on bones below. You kneel, tracing the circles with dirt-smudged fingers. You sense a convergence, body, earth, and architecture united in ritual geometry. The pit's sacred heart has been raised to stone, transcending flesh. As you step back, lantern light catches a narrow passage leading downward, a spiral staircase half collapsed. You recall rumors of a crypt beyond the pit, accessed through hidden corridors. Though fear tugs at your mind, you descend slowly, bones crunching underfoot. The air grows damp and fetid, each breath tasting of mold and memory. Stone walls close in, carved with faint reliefs. Nuns bearing bowls, peasants kneeling before crosses, angels guiding souls. At the staircase's base, you find a sealed door of weathered oak bound in iron straps. The bands bear the same rune-like marks as the nails hammered in the grave. You brace your shoulder and push. The door groans, then yields. Beyond lies a chamber, empty but for a single stone bench and a shallow basin carved into the floor. The basin's rim is stained with mineral dye, traces of the alchemical powders once poured here. You kneel beside it, placing your lantern at its edge, and lay a handful of earth into the basin. It sinks quietly, as if accepted. You rise and explore the chamber's walls, noting niches where lanterns once glowed and hooks where robes hung. Dust motes dance in your light. The silence here is absolute, broken only by your heartbeat. You sense presence, centuries of silent vigil kept by unseen sisters. You whisper a prayer you don't believe, but words feel necessary. May those who tended here find rest beyond stone. Turning back to the staircase, you pause at the threshold. You realize the crypt was never meant for living eyes, its sanctity, preserved in darkness. Yet you have come, a witness to silence that could not remain buried. You ascend, each step leaving footprints in dust. Back in the moonlit cloister, you pause one last time before the pit's altar slabs. You set your lantern on the stone and remove the rosemary you carried. You place it carefully atop the carved crosses, letting its scent mingle with night air. You strike a flint, sending sparks into the rosemary, and the leaves smolder softly. Smoke rising in blue-gray tendrils. You step back and watch the smoke drift across the slabs, curling into the ruined arches. The fire is small, but its light dances on stone, reviving inscriptions and mosaics for a moment. You realize that silence and stone have married here, ritual and memory bound in crumbling masonry. You feel their weight settle in your bones. With a final bow of your head, you snuff the lantern and let darkness reclaim the cloister. Your lantern's glass faintly glows as you walk away, footsteps shifting from stone to grass. Behind you, the pit and its silent cathedral stand as a testament that even in mass death, the living can listen to voices carved in earth and echo them through centuries. Silence may be stone's dominion, but stone itself can speak if one knows how to hear. You stand once more at the edge of the plague pit as dawn's first light softens the ruined cloister. Silence hangs heavy, yet you feel it stir around you, a deep, resonant hush born of centuries. You trace the rim of the pit with your gaze. Pigment rings, pebble channels, feather arrays, buried crosses, and the silent altar slabs. Each symbol holds a fragment of story, but the whole remains unspoken, like a song half remembered. You kneel in the mud, brushing loose soil from the top of a bone that peeks through the earth. The limestone patterns beneath it echo the labyrinth. Disc and the carved crosses, architecture mirrored in body. You cup your hands around the exposed skull, feeling its cool surface beneath cracked brows and jagged sutures. You imagine the soul that once animated it, a peasant breathing through plague, a sister chanting prayers, a healer offering tea beside fevered cheeks. Rising, you let your lantern's last ember dim. You feel the hush deepen, as though the pit itself holds its breath. You step around the grave's edge, letting each footprint press its own story into the soft earth. You pause at the spot where the pilgrim's token was placed, an iron ring you returned at nightfall, now buried beneath moss and memory. You press your palm flat, as if greeting an old friend. A breeze stirs the rosemary crowns still growing at the pit's perimeter. You inhale its scent, minted sorrow mixed with earth's damp breath, and let it fill your lungs. You close your eyes and breathe again, tasting history in each inhale. You remember the sisters who vanished into tunnels, the woman with the silver ring, the child whose copper whistle lay silent. Their voices echo here in scent and symbol, waiting for you to carry them onward. You kneel and draw a handful of soil, letting crimson dust, ochre, and iron oxide drift through your fingers. It falls in slow, deliberate arcs, like petals from a burned rose. You whisper names you'll never know: listener, healer, believer, exile. You feel their presences swirl in the rising light, formulating a choir of silent testimony. You let the dust settle back into the pit, a soft red benediction. Stepping back, you gather the artifacts you've collected: a rune-marked nail, a labyrinth pebble, a feather from the radial burial, and a shard of embroidered cloth. You arrange them on a flat stone slab, replicating their positions in the grave. In miniature, you rebuild the ritual geometry. You place the nail at the southern edge, the pebble channel to the east, the feather fern at the center's base, and the cloth fragment near where hope was sown. Each object resonates with the rhythms of earth and bone. You light a small torch at the cloister's broken archway. The flame flickers across mossy stones and shattered capitals, illuminating faded fresco fragments of angels guiding souls. You step into the arch's shadow and hold the torch aloft, casting dancing silhouettes on the ruins. It feels as though the past stirs, shadow people rising from collapsed walls to witness your vigil. Drawing a deep breath, you begin to speak. In a voice low enough to stir only the silent stones. We come in search of names, in search of voices lost to plague and time. We build our stories from your symbols, petals, pigments, pebbles, and bones. We carry your echoes beyond this hallowed ground. Your words hang in the morning air, met by a gentle breeze that caresses the ruins, as if offering reply. You lower the torch and circle the pit 3 times, each lap slower than the last. You let your hand hover over each symbolic element, bowing your head in gratitude. You feel the ground pulse beneath your feet, earth remembering the weight of so many souls. You imagine their hearts beating in unison, a subterranean drum that only you can feel as the sun climbs higher. Its rays touch the far side of the cloister, revealing new details. Etched letters on a fallen tile, a faint handprint in mortar, the ghost of color in a mosaic. You step toward these relics, eyes wide with recognition. Each shard of memory beckons you onward. There are always more stories to uncover, more symbols to decode, more silences to translate. You gather your torch and artifacts. Before departing, you press a final kiss to the slab bearing your miniature arrangement. You speak once more. May your silence be heard, your stories lived. You lay the nail gently atop the slate, the pebble beside it, the feather resting over both, and the cloth fragment across their midst. Then, softly you step back. Turning, you walk through the cloister's arches into the courtyard where wild rosemary still blooms. You pause at the threshold, looking back at the ruined cathedral of memory. You raise a hand in farewell, though no living soul stands to witness your vow. You feel the stones themselves acknowledge your pledge to carry their stories forward, to give voice to their silence. And as you step into the light of a new day, leaving behind the hush of earth and stone, you know this journey is only beginning. The artifacts, the symbols, and the whispered lore will live in your words, in your drawings, and in the hearts of those who listen. Their voices, silent no more, will weave through future generations as living testimony to compassion, ritual, and the indelible bond between life and death. She left no name, no throne, and yet her silence speaks loud.